Welcome, everyone, to the Leaders Are Learners Academy. My name is Kevin Wayne Johnson. I am the founder and the Chief Executive Officer of the Johnson Leadership Group, and I am also the creator of the Leaders Are Learners Academy. Thank you so much for making an investment in yourself, in your career progression, and in your leadership journey. Congratulations to you. And this masterclass is simply entitled Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. This is an opportunity to take a closer look at how you currently communicate with others, whether it's one on one or in a group or with your team or in the confines of a larger organization. And we're going to share some strategies and principles and tips and tools and nuggets for you to carry along with you as you continue to develop your leadership skills. It doesn't matter if you're at the front line, mid level, or senior level, whether you're in a government agency, a corporation, a small business, a church, a nonprofit, or in the academic space, we have something for each and every one of you. So, again, thank you for making the investment in your time and in your journey. Everyone Communicates, Few Connect will be divided into 10 different lessons. We'll be looking at five what we call connecting principles, and we'll look at five what we call connecting practices. And it's all about making the connection, it's about building the bridge, it's about finding common ground so that we're more than just communicating words, but we're communicating a message that others can relate to and can move out toward an action as a result of. So, we have a combination of different resources for you there in the resources section. We have a trifold brochure, which will give you an executive summary of what this masterclass is all about. You have copies of the PowerPoint presentation that I'll be going through. That's your information. You also have a copy of your participant workbook. It's like your own handy dandy notebook and notepad where you can take notes, fill in the blanks, read different scenarios. We have some charts and diagrams for you to follow. You feel free to take as many notes as you like. Use an asterisk, underline, circle important points. And what's really nice about the way that this masterclass is structured for you is that at any time you can always feel free to pause and stop and rewind and reflect and do a self assessment and go back and read again and just sort of think about the material that we go through together as you follow along on the PowerPoint as well as your participant guide as well. It doesn't end there. We also have a few images for you to sort of highlight the message from each of the 10 lesson plans. There's different images there that are uploaded for you to take a look at. And then we also have a couple of videos which will sort of reinforce the message that we're sending to you about communication, strategic communication, tactical communication, everyday communication, so that when it's all said and done, we can better understand about how to connect. So, I'm very happy to be with you again. Take full advantage of this masterclass. Glad you're here, and let's go ahead and get started. You'll see that in your participant guide that you have an opportunity to download that there is a table of contents there on page number 2. And like I said earlier, they're going to be connecting principles and connecting practices that we'll go through together. And so let us begin. Session number 1 on page 3 starts out with this first principle. And that is that when you and I are communicating a message, and this is for both personal and professional development, connecting increases your influence in every situation. And you'll see here that there's a quote at the top of the page by Ralph Nichols. It says, "The number one criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is the ability to communicate effectively. Highlight that and put an asterisk next to it, underline it as well. This is a very, very important principle, and this is very, very key as we go along in this masterclass. So, connecting increases your influence in every situation. So, let's take a look here at successful U.S. presidents. Successful U.S. presidents exhibit these 5 qualities. Number 1 is vision. Number 2 is pragmatism. Another way of thinking of pragmatism is just everyday practical ways and means to resolve an issue, to solve a problem, and to make a decision. Consensus building, charisma, and trustworthiness. These are 5 qualities that we have learned over time that U.S. presidents exhibit in order to be successful. Vision, pragmatism, consensus building, charisma, and trustworthiness. And interestingly enough, 4 of the 5 skills to being a successful leader all have to do with connecting. Again, we're building bridges. We are able to meet each other on common ground, and that way we are able to connect. You see, connecting is the ability to identify with people and relate to them in such a way that it increases our influence with them. Very key to our understanding. Because when it's all said and done, leadership is influence. Now, most people who disconnect aren't even aware. It's really interesting because in this life, both in our personal and professional lives, we all have blind spots. And there are some things that we just don't know. And so most people who disconnect aren't even aware. So here are some connecting signals for you. First of all, extra effort. That's where people go the extra mile. They do the extra thing. They take an additional step to go forward in order to connect with people. Unsolicited appreciation. This represents where people just say positive things. Unguarded openness. People are able to demonstrate trust. Trust is what we call the glue and the tape that keeps everything together, keeps things molded, and so we can move forward. Increased communication. So people are now in a position where they express themselves more readily. Enjoyable experiences. People feel good about what they do. And hopefully in your journey, you feel good about what you do and what you're doing. Emotional bondedness. People display a connection on an emotional level. We're able to take the intellect and the subject matter expertise and match it to what's in our heart and become emotionally bonded to others. And that's how we connect. Positive energy. So this is the second time you're hearing that word positive. We saw it under unsolicited appreciation. So people's emotional batteries are charged by being together. We are created to be together, to do things together, to collaborate, to partner, and to cooperate. Growing synergy. People's effectiveness is greater than the sum of the contributions. And then unconditional love, just accepting people for who they are. No one's perfect. We all have our flaws. We have different flaws, but when it's all said and done, we can learn to connect with people by being in a position where we can connect with them no matter where they may be in their lives. And so on page number 4, you'll have an opportunity to read this scenario about Jorge Rodriguez. And when you read through the entire scenario, it'll help you to understand exactly what we're looking to reinforce here in terms of your influence. And so when you have an opportunity to come back and spend some more time, just take a couple of minutes and read through that scenario, and it'll better help you to understand exactly what this principle is teaching. Now, Jay Hall is a name that's referenced in that scenario that you'll be reading toward the latter part, and he's a PhD. Teleometrics is an organization that conducted a study on the performance of about 16,000 executives across the board. And when it was all said and done, they were able to conclude that there is a direct correlation between achievement and the ability to care and connect with people. Very important, very, very key. So here on page number 5 then, when you take a look at the diagram and the image that we provide for you, here is some additional information for you to consider as you go forth in your journey around these connecting principles, specifically in the area of influence. So you have high achievers, average achievers, and low achievers. So high achievers care about people as well as profits. Average achievers concentrate primarily on production, and low achievers are really preoccupied with their own security. High achievers view their direct reports, their staff, their subordinates optimistically. See, positive. Positivity goes a very long way in your influence. And average achievers focus more on their own status, and low achievers show a basic distrust of their staff and their direct reports. High achievers seek advice from those under them. Average achievers are reluctant to seek advice from those under them. And low achievers just don't even bother. They don't even bother to seek any advice at all. High achievers actively listen. Average achievers listen only to their superiors, and low achievers avoid communication and rely on policy manuals. So, as we conclude this particular connecting principle number 1, answer the question on page 5, which is, do I connect best one-on-one, in a small group, or with an audience? Think about that. Write down your answer and let that sink in for just a while. All right, correct. Connecting principle number 2 is all about others. Now we're transferring our focus from self on to others. And at the top of page 6, you'll see that there's a little cartoon here, and this is very appropriate, and it means a lot, again, in both our personal and professional lives. There is no I in team, but there is an M and there is an E, and that spells me, the other person says. So there is no I in team, but there is me. But keep this in mind when it comes to others. Connecting principle number 2. When you look at that word team, T-E-A-M, it means together, everyone achieves more. So keep that in mind. And then you'll see here a quote from the late, great motivational speaker Zig Ziglar. He says, if you first help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. And that's very true and very appropriate. Again, we all need each other, finding the common ground, connecting with each other, collaborating, and cooperating as well. So, principle number two here, connecting is all about others and not ourselves. Okay, so why do we focus on ourselves and not others? Number one is immaturity. We need to get to a point where we continue to improve and develop and get better. That'll translate us from being immature to being mature, because maturity is the ability to see and act on behalf of others. Second one is ego. Third one is failure to just value everyone within our sphere of influence. Take a moment, if you would, and at the top of page 7, read the letter, Dear Speaker. And when you read that, it'll bring some additional clarity and the ability to really relate to why it's important to consider others ahead of ourselves as a part of connecting principle number two, because it's very, very key and it's very, very powerful as we go through our journey together. Connecting questions. So now that we understand that immaturity and ego and failure to value everyone are reasons why we focus on ourselves and not others, here are 3 connecting questions. Do you care for me? This is what people want to know from us as leaders. Do you care for me? Can you help me? And can I trust you? And you notice the word care, help, and trust are all capitalized. We do that on purpose. It's very important, and it really aligns with this particular principle, because the key concept here to take away is that connecting begins when the other person feels valued. And how do people feel valued? By you showing respect and honor, and that you care, and that you're a good listener to what it is that they have to say. That is what people really value. So the question here that I would like for you to answer at the bottom of page 7 is, what can I do to increase my value of others? Just think about that and answer that question, because that will help all of us to really appreciate the content and the curriculum here in principle number 2. All right, connecting principle number 3, communication. So this is really what this masterclass is all about. It's all about communication. So connecting principle number 3 then shares us that connecting goes beyond words. It really does go beyond words. If you take a look here at the opening statement, the opening paragraph on page number 8, we get into some really, really good information to kind of help us to understand what we say and what we mean by this, because there's 3 components to face-to-face communication. There are words, and there's our tone of voice and the body language. The words that we actually communicate, that we actually speak, that we give voice to. The tone of voice is the how. How we say it makes a big difference. And then, of course, the body language also includes the countenance, the facial gestures, and the hand gestures and other body movement that we have as well. And what's really interesting is how others believe what we say when we communicate has everything to do precisely with what's here in the pie chart. So the words that we say represent about 7% of how we communicate, and the other 93% is expressed either in our tone of voice, which is the way we say it or how we say it, and what others see, and that's our countenance, our facial expression, and our body language. So interestingly enough, 7% of what we communicate are the words, and 93% represent the how we say it and the way in which our body language mirrors what we're saying. Very interesting. If you haven't seen this before, take note, study it, make sure that you really start to relate to it because it definitely helps us in our communication. Absolutely. There it is at the bottom here of the PowerPoint, 90 plus percent, or in other words, 93% of the impression that we often convey. And we don't always necessarily see what our body language is emulating or maybe what our facial expression is showing, but by the time we're done with this masterclass, you'll have a better understanding and a much better appreciation of why it's so key and why it's so important. Now, here are three components to communication that we should all be aware of. And that has to do with our thought, it has to do with our action, and it has to do with our emotion. And you can see we're kind of going in a counterclockwise motion because the thoughts that we have turn into action as a result of the emotions that we're feeling, and the thoughts that we have often are expressed by way of an emotion, which ultimately turns into a thought that we have as well. So, this is a cyclical process. It is intended to really help us to remember what we're thinking often moves directly into an action, and that action is often controlled by the emotion that we feel as a result of it. And so these are what we call three components to communication. And you'll see here at the bottom of page number 8, and then we'll continue over to page number 9 there in your workbook. Here are some ways that we unfortunately break down in terms of communication. You'll see here on the left, under breakdown, you have dispassionate, theoretical, unfounded, hypocritical, presumptuous, and mechanical. And then, of course, on the top, across to the right, you'll see that thought, emotion, and actions result in these particular categories. So, for example, let's take a look at the first one. Usually, if it's broken down in terms of our communication and it's deemed to be dispassionate, that just basically knows that people know what we're thinking, but there's not much emotion behind it. Whereas if it's theoretical in terms of the breakdown, people know that we pretty much have the right thought in mind, but there's no action that's a result. So that's how you read and that's how you decipher this particular chart as you go down and as you fill in the information here on page 8, leading over to page number 9 as well. So action is something we do, connecting visually and what people see. It's an outward expression of how we go about communicating. Thought is based on something that we know, where we can connect intellectually with our mind, and it's something that people understand. Emotion is something that we feel. That comes from the heart. We're connecting emotionally. And again, it's what people feel. So what people see is the action, what people understand is the thought, and what people feel is the actual emotion. So look here over on page number 9, and you'll see here where we get into how to connect with people visually. So expand your range of expression, move with a sense of purpose, and maintain an open posture. Now, the thought here is that something we know connecting intellectually what people understand. And that's exactly what this particular graphic is intended to display here on page number 9. If you go down to the next area, it says any message you try to convey to others must contain a piece of you. So knowledge must be experiential. Experience is not only a good teacher, it's a good persuader, and something that we feel connecting emotionally, like we said here on the PowerPoint, is what people feel. So you can read through this paragraph here toward the bottom part of page number 9 and get a feel for that. And then right under that, you'll see where it says people may hear your words, but they may feel your attitude. So again, this third connecting principle in communication has everything to do with our action, and that's what people see, our thought, what people understand, and emotion, what people feel. All right. Connecting principle number 4 requires energy. So when we're having a conversation with someone, dialogue, and we're communicating, we do need to bring some energy. It's very important and it's very, very key because you do have to show some zeal and some enthusiasm for your topic. It's just very, very important. So you'll see here on page number 10 in your workbook, when it comes to energy, now we're talking about the fact that connecting always requires energy. Always. And there are what we call 4 unpardonable sins of a communicator: being unprepared, being uncommitted, being uninteresting, and being uncomfortable. They all start with UN. Don't show up unprepared. Don't show up uncommitted. Don't show up uninteresting. And please be prepared so that you're not uncomfortable. This is really, really interesting and is very, very dynamic. At the top of page number 10 here in your workbook, you'll see here that think of 3 communicators that you enjoy watching and listening to. Just think of 3. It could be more, but think of 3. In my particular case, I enjoy watching and listening to Lester Holt, who's the anchorman for NBC News. I enjoy watching and listening to different actors and actresses. I really like Viola Davis. I like watching and listening to her because she's such a wonderful actress. And I'm not sure if you all were a fan of this particular show many, many, many years ago or not, but Cheers and Frasier. I've always enjoyed watching and listening to Frasier because he has a combination of humor and intellect. It's really amazing. I watched him when he was a young actor on Cheers, and then as he matured and he branched out with his own sitcom on Frasier. I really enjoy watching and listening to these 3. So here's some examples here, 1 through 7, where we're giving examples of how I connected with people after a 25-year absence. In other words, being out of their presence for almost 2.5 decades, but still remember enjoying and watching. Number 1 is I searched for memorabilia of our time together. Number 2, I worked on remembering their names. Number 3, I tried to make them feel special. Number 4, I made my visit personal for as many people as possible. Number 5, I made an effort to spend extra time with people. Number 6, during a sermon, I shared my mistakes. And then number 7, I acknowledged them as part of my success. Right? So we're talking about energy, energizing people. So let's take a look at the rest of this chart here. So 3 of the 4, unprepared, uncommitted, uninteresting, and uncomfortable, require a lot of effort and energy. So connecting requires initiative, be the first, clarity, that's in our preparation, patience, slow down, take it easy, take your time. Number 4, selfishness. So in order to avoid selfishness, be a giver. Number 5, stamina. In order to have stamina, we really have to be in a position where we can recharge, recharge our batteries. All right, now let me direct your attention to page number 11 under clarity. Page number 11 toward the bottom. So here's a little checklist, if you would, and fill in these blanks. Integrity answers the question, did I do my best? Expectation answers the question, did I please my sponsor? Relevance answers the question, did I understand and relate to the audience? Value answers the question, did I add value to the people? Application answers the question, did I give people a game plan? And change answers the question, did I make a difference? You'll also see on page number 12, under number 4, selfishness, you'll see that there's a scenario that I would like for you to read through because that'll give you more insight on some steps that we're taking around being able to connect with people and avoiding being selfish. This has a lot to do with giving and being a giving person. That helps us to connect with people, and that's part of principle number 4. And then on page 13, under stamina, stamina is the recharging. There's an introductory little paragraph there by Lauren Wolf, and you can read through that. And then here are some tips, 1 through 8, on how I recharge myself. Number 1 is just loving life. Seeing that glass is half full, just being optimistic, being positive in every way and every circumstance. Number 2 is loving what I do. Number 3, for those of you that are married, spending time with my wife. In some instances, spending time with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband. Number 4 is just handing off what we call draining work, work that zaps your energy and takes a lot out of you. We hand that off. Number 5 is friendships, being able to be connected with good people, men and women, who we consider to be friends. Number 6, being alone, having an opportunity to sort of think and clear your mind and not have any noise around you. It's good. I call it me time. Number 7 is exercise, getting the blood flowing, getting a little sweat, getting the heart to pump. Good for you. And then number 8 is a time of prayer and meditation. So those are the 8 ways that I recharge myself. And so I leave you here with connecting principle number 4 to answer the question that's at the bottom of page 13, and that is, who do I need to increase my energy with to connect more effectively? How can I do that? And then lastly, connecting principle number 5 is skill. Connecting is more skill than natural talent. A skill is something that has to be developed and it has to be cultivated. You can take your natural gifts and cultivate those so they'll be much more effective and you'll be much more efficient in terms of your communication and being able to connect. And on page 14 there in your workbook, this particular skill principle starts out with a reading assignment. And I'm going to ask you to read that reading assignment just under the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Mr. Emerson says, all great speakers were bad speakers first. Yes, we were. We've gotten better over time with a lot of practice, but we were able to take really what was a natural talent, but we had to develop it and turn it into a skill, something that becomes very, very natural because of ongoing practice. So, what makes people listen? This is what makes people listen. So, you take a look there at the circle in the middle, successful connecting. So, relationships, sacrifice, insight, success, and ability. All of these are wrapped up and tied into what we call connecting principle number 5, taking the raw talent and the natural talent and making it a skill. Because relationships are based on who you know and oftentimes who knows you. Sacrifice is how you live. Insight is what you know. Success is what you have done, your track record, your past performance. And the ability that you bring to bear demonstrates what you can do. And so, connecting principle number 5 then ends with you answering the following question at the bottom of page 15, and that is, what connecting skill is a strength in your life? How can you make it better? So that concludes the first 5 connecting principles. And now we're going to move over to page 16 in your workbook, and we're going to go through connecting practices 1 through 5. We've just completed the principles. Now let's look at connecting practices 1 through 5. And you'll see here that we begin here with the question. The question is it difficult to find common ground with others when the only person you are focused on is yourself? A very appropriate question. Answer that question and then read the opening paragraph as we move into the new information and the new content. So, connectors connect on common ground. But there are some barriers to finding common ground. And here's what they are. The first one is assumption. The next one is just arrogance. I'm not interested. I don't want to. I don't see what the benefit is. Why do we have to do this? Next one is control. And then the other barrier to finding common ground is what we call indifference. Now, just below that, you'll see that there's a paragraph on Jim Lundy's take in his book called Lead, Follow, or Get Out of the Way. Read that paragraph, and that paragraph will then take us into the very next section there at the bottom of page 17 around choices that will help you to find common ground. So here are the choices to finding common ground. The first one is availability. The next one is listening. And then after that, there are questions and thoughtfulness, openness, likability, humility, and adaptability. All of these are what we have determined are choices that you and I can make as leaders, as thought leaders in particular, in terms of finding common ground with others. Make ourselves available. Let's become better listeners, because when we listen well, we send the message to the recipient that we value and care what it is they have to say. It's not a matter of whether we agree with what they have to say, but the fact that we're taking the time out to listen to what they have to say. Asking questions, thought provoking and open ended questions, so that we don't receive a one word response. Thoughtfulness, just being thoughtful and caring about other people and respecting and honoring them. Being open, not criticizing their ideas and their thoughts, but just being open to hear them out. Likability, I equate this to us as leaders presenting ourselves as friendly and approachable. Because when we get that likability factor in our corner, it's definitely a practice that helps us to connect, because we're able to find common ground. We're finding out that we have much more in common than we have differences. Humility, just a matter of just being humble, and then being adaptive, being flexible, being open to change. That's what adaptability is all about. And that's really what this particular lesson is teaching us. You'll see that there's some additional information for you to read under humility on page number 18 at the top. That'll give you some more insight into the importance of leaders being humble, because humility is a capacity for self criticism. And humility also allows others to shine. And so, as we conclude this particular practice, practice number one, common ground, answer the question there at the bottom of page 18. What is the bridge you need to build to connect on common ground? It'll give you some insights about who you are and your current journey, and it will help you to understand the importance of connecting as a practice on common ground. All right, over on page number 19, the next connecting practice is simplicity. Keep it simple as best we can. Not here to say that it's easy, but it's definitely doable, because connectors do the difficult work of keeping it simple. Again, here's another quote by Mr. Emerson. He says, "To be simple is to be great." If we have a way of helping people to understand something that's complex, that's an example of simplicity. Something that's hard, something that's difficult, something that's very challenging. If we have the ability to simplify it, then it increases our ability to connect with people. So there's four components to connect through communication. There's humor, there's heart, there's hope, and there's help. Remember, one of the main reasons why I enjoyed Frasier so much, from his time with Cheers all the way to the time where he was starring in his own sitcom, Frasier, is because he used humility and he used humor and intellect all together. It was very interesting. As a psychologist, he was humble and putting other people's interests and needs ahead of himself. But he was really, really a very humorous guy, but extremely smart and intellectual. And all of that came out, and that's why I thoroughly enjoyed watching and listening to him for a good number of years. So, under each of these different categories, there are what we call the three S's. Keep it simple, say it slowly, and have a smile. That's it right there. because that smile eases the anxiety and it will allay the fear and worrying that people often project when something is complex. And then as a leader, we're able to come alongside them and keep it real simple. So here's the art of simplicity: talk to people, not above them. Get to the point. Say it over and over and over again. What I call wash, rinse, and repeat. Helping people. Teaching is repeating until learning takes place. One of my favorite quotes that I learned a long time ago. You don't have to say it too many times, but say it over and over and over again to the point where it really simplifies things for people. Say it clearly and say less. So if you can articulate a point in 3 or 4 sentences versus going on and on and on for 15 minutes, that's an example of keeping it simple and helping people to understand exactly what's going on. Now, on page 20, you'll see at the very top there's a diagram that we have for you. On the left, there are recommendations, and on the right, there is the meaning. And so we find this chart to be very, very helpful in helping all of us to understand the art of simplicity. And so when you read through that, that will definitely help to make this particular practice, practice number 2, keeping it simple, to really help you to understand the concept and the context in which we are sharing the information. And then, of course, at the very bottom of page 20, I will ask you to answer that question as we conclude this particular practice, and that is, can people repeat to someone else what I have just said to them? Good question, because that helps people to remember the key point. And if we can get to that point where we can repeat to someone else what I have just said to them, that helps us and it helps them in terms of keeping it simple. All right, on to practice number 3. Connecting practices number 3 is experience. So we're now on page 21 in your workbook. Create an experience, all caps, everyone enjoys. So here are some ways to be interesting. Take responsibility for your listeners. Communicate in their world. In other words, what's on their mind? Communicate in their world, in their language. Capture people's attention from the start, at the very beginning. Say it so it sticks. People will know for sure what you meant. Take a look at these quotes at the bottom of page 21. These are some very important figures in our history, and each of these individuals' names are probably recognizable, and I can relate to what all of them are saying, but in particular, I really like the note that Winston Churchill is saying here: never, never, never give up. And not giving up comes from experience. Don't give up. Try something new, maybe do it a different way, add some additional people who have some creative thoughts in terms of our vision. But as we're communicating with others and we're connecting with them, say it so it sticks. And someone will remember what Winston Churchill said many, many, many decades ago: never, never, never give up. Now, over on the page 22, on the very next page, this particular connecting practice ends with this letter: Dear speaker. And I'm going to ask you to read through that because it's a letter written from the audience, dear speaker. and answer the question there at the bottom of page 22. How much time do I intentionally set aside to create enjoyable experiences for others? Because we do have to be deliberate and we do have to be intentional in order to connect with people. Remember, at the very beginning, it's a skill. It's more than just a natural talent or an ability. It becomes a skill by applying these connecting principles and these connecting practices. All right, practice number 4, inspire. We're now on page number 23, and connectors inspire people. So here's the equation that we use right here on page number 23 in the middle. What people know plus what people see plus what people feel, that is what equals inspiration. That's how we inspire. How we make them feel based upon what they see and based upon what they know. That's the inspiration equation. Because we have to answer these questions. What do people need to know? What do people need to see? And what do people need to feel? I mean, even Steve Jobs, when he was working as the chief executive officer of Apple and ultimately grew it to be $1 trillion company, at the very bottom of page 23, Steve Jobs reminds us that management is about persuading people to do the things they don't want to do, while leadership is about inspiring people to do the things they never thought they could do. So, as leaders, we have to inspire people to get things done. So, that's why the equation includes what they know, what they see, and what they feel. It's an equation. And these are all strategies and principles that will help us to become better communicators. Everyone communicates, few connect. So to the left here on the PowerPoint, you'll see that what do people need to know? Well, that you understand them and that you are focused on them and that you have high expectations of them. What do people need to see? Well, they need to see your conviction and they need to see your example. You be a model for them to see and to emulate and to follow. And what do people need to feel? Well, people need to feel your confidence in yourself and them, and they need to feel your gratitude for them. You are grateful that they are part of your team, they're part of your journey, and they just want to know that you have gratitude for them in terms of what they bring and what they have to add as it relates to everything that's happening, all of the initiatives, all of the projects, all of the different teamwork, everything that's going on, their contributions. They want to be seen and they want to be heard. And we conclude this particular connecting practice by having you to read this letter to Doctors Cage and Doctors Marshall. Doctors Cage and Marshall. And it continues all the way over on page number 25 as well. And when you read through this, it'll help you to understand the principle around inspiration. It's very key and is very, very important. And so this particular connecting practice, inspire, then ends with this question at the bottom of page 25. And that is, what part of the inspiration equation do I need to work on knowing, seeing, or feeling? Or in some instances, it might be all three. It might be one, it may be two, or it might be all three. But answer that question as you come to a close for this particular lesson and this particular connecting practice. Last but not least, the fifth connecting practice is credibility. You and I have to have credibility in everything we do. You'll see the quote here at the top of page 26. It says, credibility is currency for leaders and communicators. With it, they are solvent. Without it, they are bankrupt. So true. So credibility is the currency that connectors have. And here's the checklist. Answer these questions. Have I connected with myself? Have I made right my wrongs? Am I accountable? Do I lead like I live? Do I tell the truth? Am I vulnerable? Am I following the golden rule? Do I deliver results? Let's go back to number one. Have I connected with myself? The question here is, how self-aware are we as leaders? Do we know our personality type? Do we know our conflict management style? Do we know our leadership style? Do we know our behavioral style? Are we comfortable in our own skin? Because that gives us credibility now to walk in the awesome responsibility of leading others. Have I made right my wrongs? In other words, have I had a chance to correct those mistakes? Have I had an opportunity to do better in the space that I'm in so that I will be able to move forward and demonstrate to people that, you know what, I'm imperfect just like everyone else. I make mistakes. I apologize and let's move forward. Am I accountable? So, in order to hold other people accountable, we first have to be self accountable. Do I lead like I live? Right? In other words, am I avoiding hypocrisy? Am I being consistent? Am I the same person, whether you see me publicly or in private? Do I tell the truth? Is my word my bond? Can people rely on the fact that when I say I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, in fact, I'm there? Am I vulnerable? That's a really, really good one. Am I transparent is another way of saying it. Do I let people know that, you know what, I have weaknesses and I need each and every one of you to surround me to help me with those weaknesses, but it's not just about me. I'm here to help you in those areas where you're weak to make you stronger. Number 7, am I treating people the way that I want to be treated? That's a very basic, universal concept. The golden rule. Treating people the way we would want to be treated. Fairly, equitably, with respect, with honor, with care, with value. And do I deliver results? Am I a person that gets things done? That's another way of saying that. So all of these add credibility to who we are and what we're doing. And so this particular practice ends at the bottom of page 27 and then over on page number 28 as well, in reference to, can I learn to connect with others? And the answer is absolutely yes. And the example that we use here is Moses. Moses was not good with people. Moses was not a good communicator. And Moses was not a good leader. However, he was able to get things accomplished. And as you read here from Lauren Wolf at the bottom of page 27 and over to page number 28, you'll find that Moses had credibility and he was able to get things done. And so you can conclude this particular practice really and just spending time on this checklist and going through and annotating some different ideas and some different thoughts. So, I want to thank you again so very much, like I did in the very beginning, by coming to the Leaders or Learners Academy and making an investment in your own personal and professional development. I can be reached at this phone number below or www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com if you have any questions or any additional comments or feedback. This masterclass is also available in a shorter version by way of a lunch and learn as well. So it's totally up to you, it's your option. But we looked at 5 connecting practices and 5 connecting principles because when it's all said and done, everyone communicates, but few connect. And the key here is to apply these strategies and principles so that you will become a better communicator because you're now able to better connect with people. Again, take a look at the various images that we have uploaded in the resources section. Take a look at the different videos that we have for you as a supplement to the information. Go back and take a look at the workbook. By all means, go back and take a look at the PowerPoint presentation as well. And I hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed this time, thoroughly enjoyed this masterclass. This is Kevin Wayne Johnson. All the best to you in your career progression and in your leadership journey. Thank you so much. See you next time.